Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. It is May 23rd, 2022. Welcome to the meeting of the Mayor and Council of Princeton, New Jersey. And we'll start with our meeting statement.
Notice of this meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act and state regulations governing remote public meetings, including the time, date, and location of the meeting, and clear and concise instructions to the public for accessing the meeting and making comments. In addition, the agenda and all related materials were posted electronically and made available to the public on Princeton's meeting portal in advance of the meeting.
Thank you, Dolores. Do we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Mayor. Ms. Perrone Lambros?
Here.
Ms. Niedergang?
Here.
Mr. Cohen? Ms. Fraga?
Here.
Ms. Sachs?
Here.
Mr. Newland?
Here.
Mayor Frida?
Here. Thank you. All right. Announcements and reports. Can we start with council announcements and/or reports? Leticia?
Yes, just one very quick announcement that just reminder that the Youth Advisory Committee is currently recruiting for positions for, this would be for rising sophomores and high schoolers, not just the public school, but the private schools, so long as they live in Princeton, are eligible to apply. The deadline is the end of this month, so I encourage anyone that's interested in local government to consider applying to serve on the Youth Advisory Committee.
Thank you. Eve?
Thanks, Mayor. I have a few things. I wanted to extend my appreciation to Harrison Watson, a new member of PEC, who, along with other members of the Environmental Commission, organized a community science day at the Friends of Rogers Refuge on May 1st. There were about 40 participants who helped to collect data for Princeton's environmental resource inventory, which is being updated this year under the leadership of our new open space coordinator, Cindy Taylor. Thanks also to Winnie Spar and David Padullo, who led the tours, and to the Princeton Library and Sustainable Princeton, who helped out. Due to a generous donation to expand the library's Nature Explorer backpack program, this event will be repeated in the future at Rogers Refuge and hopefully other open space areas. A couple of updates on new laws and ordinances. The plastic bag, statewide plastic bag ban kicked in on the 5th of this month. There is an option to report a violation through See-Click-Fix. So I encourage people to do that. We're not after punishment, but we do want the new law, which bans single-use plastic bags and styrofoam containers, to be followed by our merchants and restaurants. So if you see somebody, I encourage you to have a conversation and also to maybe put in a report to See-Click-Fix, so someone from the health department will stop by and also have a conversation with them about how they can comply. And another ordinance, this one is local, that kicked into effect just this past Monday, is the Sustainable Landscaping Ordinance, which prohibits the use of gas leaf blowers until the fall. So if you have a landscaper who is using this equipment, please talk with them. There's information on the municipal website to help you with this. And again, if you observe someone who's not in compliance, don't call the police. We encourage you to report it through See-Click-Fix. And again, the emphasis is on education, getting people to learn about the new ordinance and why it was in place, and to comply in that manner. The goal is not to punish. Anyway, that's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Eve. Other council members with announcements or report? Layton?
Just one quick one, Mayor. about building community over the weekend. Send Hugger Packing, Felicia Spitz, along with Ross Wishnick and a couple other people, put 2 planter boxes in the Reading Circle Senior area where they will grow fresh fruits and vegetables. And I cannot tell you how excited the senior residents are to have that done. And just want to say thank you to those who helped build it out, and looking forward to getting some fresh fruits and vegetables. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Leighton. Any other council? Let me just hit a couple things real quick. Memorial Day Parade is back this year. It is Saturday. It starts at 10 a.m. It starts at the corner of Princeton Avenue and Nassau Street and goes down Nassau Street to Monument Hall. So, and then there's a ceremony at 11 a.m. at Monument Hall, hoping as many members of the public as possible will participate, as well as council members. Let me see. The county's having a County Memorial Day ceremony on Sunday, the 29th at 11 a.m. You got to Google their site to figure out exactly where. Sorry, I forgot to write that down. We have the Pride flag raising on June 3rd, noon. And that is at Monument Hall. And the Pride picnic is also on June 3rd, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Princeton Shopping Center. The 100th anniversary of the Washington Monument in front of Monument Hall is on June 9th at 11 a.m. And the Juneteenth flag raising is on June 17th at noon. That's at Palmer Square. My council members, excuse me for the email I just sent you a few minutes ago. I mixed up which flag raising was where. The Pride flag raising is at Monument Hall. The Juneteenth flag raising is at Palmer Square. My apologies. The Pride Parade is on June 18th at 11 a.m. And Juneteenth ceremony celebration will also be on June 18th, 1 to 4 p.m. at the YMCA fields. And the Princeton First Aid and Rescue Squad's having an open house on June 19th, 1 to 3. So halfway through the meeting, I'll ask everyone which of those dates they remembered. Thank you. Okay, sorry. Other council announcements or reports before we go to staff? All right, Jim.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you, council members. We have an emergency road closure tomorrow on Great Road East up around Stewart. We will be closing the road to southbound traffic only. Southbound traffic will be detoured around the construction zone on Stewart Road to Great Road West. We have a sinkhole that DPW will be repairing tomorrow. And also the Witherspoon Street project, which was due to start Thursday, we've opted to wait until after Memorial Day because it didn't make sense to open up the roadway for a couple of days and have work going on Friday when it's the beginning of the weekend. So we will get started in earnest on Witherspoon Street on Tuesday, May 31st. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. Okay. No other council reports. Great. Bernie, anything else from staff for this part?
Oh, Mayor.
Okay. Let's go to public comments for items not on the agenda and see if there's anybody that's on the Zoom call this evening has a comment for anything not on the agenda. All right. Not seeing any hands up. We do have 3 emails. I've got one in front of me and I'm hoping a couple council people will jump in on the other 2 because I emailed those out, but sorry, I got tied up. Anyway, let me read this one and we'll figure out what's going on with the other 2 in just a second. Dear Mayor Frieda, Council President Fraga, and council members, I am writing as president of the board of the Washington Oaks at Princeton Homeowners Association to express the board's position about a proposal made last November to develop a dog park at the historic overlook, block 9801, lot 4, which abuts our development. The board is opposed to use of this location for several reasons. Use inconsistent with the historic nature of the site. The overlook has historical significance in relation to the Battle of Princeton as the area where British troops first caught sight of Washington's approaching forces. It is also the home of the Washington oak, a tree that was alive at the signing of the U.S. Constitution in 1787. Calton Homes, the developers of Washington Oaks at Princeton and Princeton Township, settled a dispute over the White Farm by, in part, preserving the Washington oak and setting aside the 19-acre meadow as open space. Converting this meadow into a dog park with its associated improvements such as fencing, waste collection bins, restroom facilities is inconsistent with the intended purpose of this open space. Limited public parking. The lack of available parking makes this location very unattractive as a site for the general public. The parking lot near the corner of Route 206 and Hutchinson Drive has only 4 stalls. On-street parking is prohibited on Hutchinson Drive. Parking on the surrounding streets is limited to marked stalls, which are almost entirely occupied by the residents of Washington Oaks. Restricted access to the site. Access to the historic overlook is possible only via a parking lot and a footpath. The association maintains the parking lot and provides public access across the footpath as required by the association's governing documents for the association. However, the overlook is not accessible directly from Route 206 or any other public street. For these reasons, the board believes that the historic overlook is an unsuitable location for a public dog park and urges you to reject any proposal for developing the historic overlook open space for this purpose. Regards, Paul Barkowski, President, Washington Oaks at Princeton Homeowners Association. Okay. I'm hoping while I was reading that, someone else from council may have picked up on the other 2 emails I sent out. Anybody? No?
I didn't see them.
I did not get that. I was just checking. If you want to send it, I'd be happy to read, but.
I got to find it now. One second.
I just looked also, Mayor, and I don't see an email from you.
Okay.
You just really want to read them all of them.
Yeah, I do. I do. How'd you know? Okay, one sec. Let me,
Can I ask that everyone who's not,
I see one. I see an email from you, Mark. One of them is, I think it actually must have been meant for,
yeah, it's,
it
yeah,
must,
no, I found them. Yeah, I agree. It's for a topic we already discussed, but
but I'd be happy to read the second one.
okay. Okay, I just found them. Let me read the first one and you do the second one. So thank you. Okay, the first one is Mayor and Council. My name is Dozer Hammond. I live at 87 Lee Avenue in Princeton and have been a resident in Princeton for 33 years. I write in support of cannabis dispensaries in Princeton. Cannabis is now legal in New Jersey, passing by a large majority, and it should be available to all adults in a regulated environment. Cannabis is already available in all Princeton high schools and middle schools, and it is not in any contro form. Any student can go to school and obtain it within a few days, if not sooner. There are drawbacks to cannabis, just as there are to alcohol, tobacco, and the lottery, but they are no worse than those other restricted areas. The main reason I think Princeton should have dispensaries is that it is not fair or just to say it is okay to do it in other towns, but not here. I grew up in a dry town and went to college in one, and the borders of those towns contained multiple liquor stores and bars. Because, of course, many of the residents drank, including my parents and most of their friends. There should be enhanced educational efforts about the effects of marijuana, including its effects on adolescents. And the business and revenues of the dispensary should be aimed towards helping those groups most hurt by the previous marijuana laws, and especially their unequal enforcement. I realize these benefits are not as great as some had hoped. I also think, if possible, cannabis should not be allowed to be advertised or promoted, but it should be available to adults in a controlled environment in our town. Okay, that was that one. Mia?
The next one is for the ordinance.
Oh, the next one's-
2022-14.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Good point, Dolores. Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
All right, we'll hold that one. Sorry for the confusion here this evening, people, all me. Okay. Anybody else have anything for public comments for items not on the agenda? Nobody else from the public? All right. So now we have a special improvement district budget, which is resolution 22-180, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton introducing and approving the 2022-2023 budget of the Princeton Special Improvement District, directing the municipal clerk to publicly advertise the budget and schedule a public hearing, and directing the tax assessor to prepare an assessment roll of properties within the district based upon the budget. Public hearing would be June 27th, 2022. So this is actually is this the same as an ordinance introduction? Trishka?
Yes. Yes, we're
Okay.
doing it as the same as a ordinance introduction.
Okay,
It's a resolution.
it's just the resolution to introduce, so there's no discussion then.
No.
Okay,
Yes, what Dolores said.
yep. Okay, Michelle, do you want to move that?
I'd like to make a motion to introduce the budget resolution for the special improvements.
Yep, thank you, Michelle. Fitting that you do that. Is there a second? Eve, thank you. Okay, roll call.
Ms. Perone Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
Yes,
Ms. Sachs,
Yes,
Mr. Newland.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have two presentations, and the first one is on Princeton's proposed bid solicitation for the collection and disposal of solid waste, bulky waste, and organics. And who's leading us into that happy field of opportunity?
Christine. And I would like to say that this actually is a much more interesting topic than it sounds. It's about it's something that we've been wanting to do as a council for several years, and we now have the report back from one of the premier consultants in the state who has done a thorough audit of our waste stream and come up with some recommendations for options that are both more sustainable and hopefully more economically sustainable as well. So I don't know, Deanna or Christine or Wayne.
Yes, so I will be starting with Wayne DeFeo, and then Christine's going to jump on. Apparently Wayne is having problems with his camera.
It says the host has disabled it. I mean, if you guys don't want to see me, I get it.
We'll just listen to your charming voice instead.
All right, let's try. There we go. I think it's worked. There we go.
Oh, perfect. All right. Thank you, Christine. Christine, you can go to the next slide. So tonight we're doing a two-part presentation. Wayne and I are going to start the presentation reviewing our existing waste program, and then covering what's in the proposed bid solicitation and talking about the schedule and next steps. Then Christine will jump in for Sustainable Princeton and discuss our emission reductions that can be realized with the plan. Next slide. So currently we have a contract to pick up solid and bulky waste from homes in Princeton 1 time per week. We also include the Princeton Housing Authority sites. We've moved to a semi-automated collection service. When we first started the contract 3 years ago, it was a manual collection, but due to the amount of waste that was produced and the weight of the containers that were being put out at the curb, we approved a change order to go to the semi-automated collection. And that just means that all of the labor is not done by just the contractors themselves. They do have equipment on the truck to help with that. You'll see that the maximums that are in here for the solid waste amounts, and then also the bulky waste. And it's been set up so that we are paying off of a tonnage figure rather than a service unit figure. And that comes into play when Wayne talks about what we're moving towards in the next bid solicitation. We had set it up also as a 1-year contract for up to 3 years of service. And the idea was that we would be using that time to revisit what our trash contracts are and looking at bringing back the organic program. Next slide. So unfortunately, during the 3 years of the contract, we also were hit with COVID. We had many more people staying at home. We had a lot more waste being put out curbside. The hauler was also having problems with labor shortages and also workman comp issues related to the waste stream that's being produced. So over the years, our fees have increased about 18%, and our solid waste tonnage has also gone up approximately 1,000 tons over that time. So we would like to get these right-sized for the community. Next slide. And with that, that's where we brought in Wayne DeFeo of DeFeo Associates to help us. He has looked at our leaf and brush program, but also looking at the solid waste program and what we could do to also tie in the restart of organic collection. So with that, Wayne, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Deanna. I get to give you all the good news and the bad news. The bad news we've heard somewhat already due to COVID and just due to general shortages in supply chains. Costs are increasing up to 40% in bids that are currently being awarded this year. Hopefully by the time we go to bid and receive bids, this will stabilize. However, it's a two-pronged problem, actually three-pronged. One, as Deanna mentioned, was the cost of labor. Cost of labor has increased dramatically just trying to get people to take the job. And drivers, who of course are trained and CDL certified, are demanding higher wages and very hard to come by. At the same time, as you can imagine, laborers, because it is a labor intensive, high rate of injury industry. Solid waste workers are injured in the same basic category as coal miners. And because of that, they're demanding higher wages. And we're seeing wages going from somewhere between $13 and $15 an hour for workers, laborers, if you will, up to over 20, where drivers are starting to demand 30 when they were making 20. Of course, this has to be paid for somehow. At the same time, cost of equipment has increased at a rapid pace, if it can even be obtained. Just the body of a truck today has a $10,000 surcharge for steel added to it. If you've tried to shop for an automobile, you know very well what that's about. As Deanna pointed out, more solid waste is being generated. There is, of course, the third part of the triangle, which is that, as you all know, and we all experience, fuel costs are rising dramatically. The latest projection that I have on the cost of diesel, which does not seem out of the realm of possibility, is that by August will exceed $8 per gallon. When you have a vehicle that is getting in the neighborhood at a good day of 9 miles per gallon, you can imagine the cost structure. Granted, a number of haulers do have natural gas powered vehicles. Your current contractor runs most of his fleet on natural gas, but natural gas pricing has not exactly gone down. It's still better than diesel, which will only give those companies that have natural gas a competitive advantage. At the same time, we're seeing service disruptions. At this point, for example, Waste Management, the largest company in the world to collect solid waste and recycling, is achieving about a 90% completion rate on its routes in a given workday. Totally unacceptable if you're the receiving party, totally unacceptable from their perspective. Therefore, we're having to look at ways to revise what we do. Next slide, please. The goal then of a new contract is to do our best to control the waste cost. You notice I'm very careful to say it's not going to go down. We want to control the increase. At the same time, anything we can do to reduce the total amount of waste going to landfill, which is where your solid waste ultimately goes, through the use of an organics food waste recycling program, which you did on a pilot basis, but we are proposing doing on a municipal-wide basis, will reduce the total solid waste generation. Christine will cover that in the process. In addition, by doing food waste recycling, you will have a lower carbon footprint because of course that will be used to make natural gas if it goes to a company that does that, or it will be used to make compost, or both. Next slide, please. The proposal that I am suggesting to you that we go out to bid on is that you provide each resident of the community with anything between a 66 and a 95 gallon solid waste collection cart. Those carts would be customized and have hot stamp lettering and educational language built right into them. Ultimately, those carts, in conjunction with also providing a 22 gallon organics cart, would be paid for through the bidding process by the contractor, who would ultimately effectively lease them to the town. And at the end of a 5-year bid, you would own the carts. I am suggesting a 5-year contract term for carts if they're included, simply because of the cost of amortization over 5 years. What we found is that versus a 3-year contract, it's a dramatic increase. While this will add to the initial cost of this contract, what it will do is also provide some savings potential, because we know that in this case, you would still have a semi-automated system, but every resident would be getting carts. In addition, you'd have incentive to participate in the organics program. You have the cart, might as well use it. And this will continue to reduce worker injuries on the part of the company. At that point, we need to consider the fact that a single workman's compensation claim today costs a company, municipality, or whomever approximately $150,000 per claim. Those are all in costs. If that can be reduced, you save money. The biggest change for your perspective besides CART would be to provide bulk waste collection by reservation only. In one municipal survey that I was involved with, we found that 6% of the residents on any given bulk waste collection day actually set the material out. 6%. But the hauler has to drive around the entire town as if every street has something on it. This adds a dramatic cost increase that we don't need at this time. I am recommending that we do a reservation system. And this can be structured a number of different ways, and the details will be worked out in the bid. We also will get feedback in that detail workout prior to award, and we may have to change that. In other words, who handles the reservations? Lastly, and not lastly, I'm sorry, but one of the bigger issues as well is your current system of being charged per ton is an archaic system of charging. I am suggesting that you do modernize this. We have a flat rate for your service. Now you have a budgeted number. You know for a fact that every month they're going to have this flat rate for service for collection. Secondly, you now have a much cleaner way of educating residents that the more they can recycle properly, operative word, and the more they participate in the organics program, the more they help Princeton save money. The motto being, if you're throwing it in the garbage and it doesn't belong there, you're literally throwing your tax dollars in the garbage can. This is not a huge change. It won't change everything on a budgetary standpoint from how you pay the bill. It just changes the fact that you have a flat rate for one service, and then you have a changing fee based on the tons you generate. We will put in bid options in order to have bulk waste be once a week or once a month, because you may see a price differential between once a week bulk versus once a month. It's very rare that residents need it weekly, but you will have the option to award one way or the other. We will be looking at the ability for residents to purchase additional carts, which goes somewhat to a per container concept. Now, instead of saying you can put out 200 pounds, we're saying you can put out 95 gallons or 66 gallons. If you need 190 gallons, you can buy that second 95 gallons at the price of the cart. It's really a very good deal. We would also include technology in those carts in order that the carts can be tracked. It might be RFID chips, it might be something else. Next slide, please. The bottom line with carts is very simple. Whether in most of Princeton, fully automated collection will be feasible. In other parts, it will not. This is done in many, many locations. It's more efficient, it's much cleaner, it's much neater. It reduces animal problems, it reduces issues of litter. You don't get garbage blowing around the streets. We've already talked about worker injury, and we talk about cost control because now, with the exception of a bulk truck going around, you only need a driver. That reduces and helps us to control the labor cost, which both is a problem from a cost standpoint, but more so, it is a problem that people simply cannot get people to do the work. If you can't get people to do the work, no matter what you're paying, it doesn't really matter. And I'll leave you with this before I turn it to Christine, is to say, I know that in some people's minds, immediately I'll hear, where are we going to put the carts? The city of San Francisco gives every resident 3 carts. Portland does this, Seattle does this. If you've ever been to San Francisco, it is a densely populated city with hills. They work. And the last final point on carts is, once they're installed, it has been my experience, while people may scream and holler about change up front, once the carts have been out for 6 months, you will never be able to take them away. People love them that much. And with that, I'll turn it to Christine.
Thanks, Wayne. Couple things to note about, why is now a good time to restore the organics collection. What I've come to understand from Wayne, and please chime in, is that the collection fees for 700 households, which was about the amount of households that were voluntarily participating when the program was running, is about the same for 7,000 households. The hauler is going to charge the same. So might as well make this a townwide program. There is the potential that the tipping fee for the food waste is less than solid waste. So if the estimates are that about 25% of what gets put out to go to the landfill is food waste, if you can divert that to somewhere that has a less expensive tipping fee, there is a potential for there to be some savings. And the savings is only greater if you have 7,000 households participating. And Wayne explained that, the timing is, and the rationale for when the town goes out to bid for the solid waste, that is the time to include in that RFP options for the food waste. And we know now that there are viable food waste recycling facility options that will accept residential organics. That was not the case back when the program was running, and one of the reasons why it had to go on hiatus.
Thanks, Christine. So the next steps are for Wayne to finish putting together the bid specification, and we'll put it out for advertisement sometime in June. We'll also be working to have the request for proposal for that organic disposal contract to go out at the same time. It has a shorter turnaround time, so we would look to be getting that back in July. The collection bids in September, and the idea, while we don't need to start a new service until February, we need this advanced lead time because of supply chain, because of manufacturing time to get the carts and to get them distributed to residents. Next slide. And so during the second half of the year, as we move towards the new contract, we will be working closely with Sustainable Princeton to make sure that we have good educational information going out to the residents using website, using a townwide mailing system. We'll be looking at opportunities to upcycle or somehow collect and recycle the garbage bins that they may have. With our new compliance officer, we also have added personnel to help us when we do move into the new contract to perform inspections and help get compliance from residents after this change in the system. So with that, Christine, I think you'll go into the next slides.
Yeah. One of our roles is to help the municipality, and in particular with this proposed plan, determine how things align with the town's climate action plan and how they will help us achieve our emissions reduction goal. So hope you are all aware that the town has a goal of reducing our emissions from 2010 levels, 80% by 2050. And this chart shows you how we are trending towards that goal. To put this in context, our downstream emissions from the solid waste that we generate and send to the landfill accounts for about 1.6% of our annual greenhouse gas emissions. This is using a production-based GHG inventory methodology. And that amount stays pretty consistent from year to year. As you can see in this time series going back to 2010, the purple at the bottom is our emissions from our solid waste stream. So this proposed plan does align with our climate action plan. It aligns with objective 10.1, which is to evaluate all our waste streams and implement a plan to save money and reduce emissions. And it aligns with objective 10.2, which is to implement an equitable unit-based waste management program with a well-designed transition plan. And our estimates of what the emissions reduction potential could be if the town were to adopt a town-wide food waste recycling program would be that if we have about 6,025 tons of landfill waste and approximately 25% of that that goes to the landfill is food waste. And we know that about 1,500 tons of food waste went to the landfill. And we use the EPA's WARM tool to calculate the annual reduction in emissions if that food waste went to a commercial scale composting facility or a commercial scale anaerobic digestion facility. It's about 900 or 800 metric tons of CO2 equivalents that would be reduced on an annual basis. And the EPA's GHG equivalency calculator tells you that that is equivalent to about 13,000 to 15,000 tree seedlings grown for 10 years. So, that amount is about 1%, less than 1% of our annual emissions. So I don't want the takeaway to be that that's not a lot. It is. Every little thing we do to reach that 80% by 2050 is important. That's that.
Okay. Council questions, comments? Eve?
I was going to give others the first chance. This is something that, as Mia said at the beginning, we've been working on for a long time. It was a very hard decision to end the previous compost program. And that was kind of a very limited program. And this opportunity to move this, to make this available to everyone, and also to have the time built into this to reach out and educate people, to have our new community compliance officer available to, walk the route that the trash pickup is going to take and look at and see where people need education. Like all the pieces are finally falling into place. And I just want to really thank Deanna and the rest of engineering and Christine and Sustainable Princeton and Wayne. It's been really fun to work on this. And I'm really excited, and I hope we have the support of all of council to move this forward.
Okay. Sorry, Michelle.
Yeah, this is phenomenal. It's just an amazing amount of work. And I just thank you, Christine, the team at Sustainable, and our engineering team. I don't know how you manage to do all that you do in a day. I really like it. I like the idea of the uniformity, the cleanness of it. And I love the idea of bringing the composting back. I know, there's so much going into landfill that shouldn't go into landfill, and it's just so much better for our environment. So I think we really take a leadership role in doing this. And doing the cart, I just have a stupid question, but so if you have an extra garbage can, if everything doesn't fit into the cart that week, what happens? You just have to wait till next week? I mean, because it's not manual anymore. It's, it's by the little handle. So how does that work? I mean, you just have to tell everybody you can only put out what's in the composting and what's in the in the solid bins? Is that?
That's correct. And when you do a cart program like this, because of the nature of the fact that the hauler is going to be basing his crew on just picking up a cart with a machine, if it's outside the cart, they won't pick it up. They'll drive right past it, other than the bulk, which will be scheduled and reserved. That's a different truck. So yeah, that's exactly what would happen. However, on the other side of that coin, remember, you're getting a 95-gallon garbage cart potentially. That's a lot of garbage.
A lot of garbage. Well, I mean, people will need to learn to work within those confines, and then a lot goes into the composting or the organic.
Correct.
And then, and I also I'm really astounded at the fact that so much bulk pickup isn't utilized. And so I like the idea of scheduling it and being much more cost effective. I just like the uniformity and the look of it too. I mean, it'll look really a lot cleaner. And I think it's just probably where things are going to it being automated. So I don't really have any other questions other than just to say thank you for doing all this work. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Michelle. Leighton.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, this is obviously a great idea for sustainability and environmental justice. It's a no-brainer. But my one question is for the bulk items. I heard in the presentation that when there are bulk items, that the crews don't have to continue to go through the whole route. Can you give me a better explanation than that? And also, you know, in some neighborhoods, you do have beds and chairs and all kinds of stuff that people put out when trash is to be picked up. That is to be handled now by reservation. Can you explain more about how that works and whose responsibility it is to call and make the pickups?
Sure. On the first part, in terms of driving around town, think of this like a reverse UPS delivery system. UPS does not stop at every home. They optimize their route every day. They don't drive down every street unless they have a stop on every street. Whereas the post office, by default, must drive by every single home along a route. So people will say the post office isn't very efficient. Well, the post office has a different mandate. Their mandate is to go to every home. UPS, FedEx only has to go to homes where there are deliveries to be made. Therefore, their route can be highly efficient. They can decide which is more efficient for them. Many trucks today are using, and many haulers today are using GPS type planners. It's very common to use a computerized route system. That, in combination with your second question, the homeowner, or the resident, I should say, would be responsible for calling or emailing the reservation system, which is not set up yet, obviously, and making an arrangement on a date certain for their collection day in their zone, which is typically a few days before that occurs. That would then get fed into a system that the hauler can use to get pickup. If they miss that date, to go to your concern, they would have to wait for the next collection cycle. And that's why we are suggesting to you that one of the options in this bid would be to do once a week collection with reservation, but get a price option for once a month. Once a month, of course, would mean if you miss your collection of bulk, you're going to wait a fairly long time for the next one. Once a week, you're only waiting a week. It's no big deal. So the generator, the person getting the bulk waste to be picked up, is the person responsible for making the reservation, to answer that question. Does that answer both?
Yes. Yes, it does. Thank you.
Wayne, I want to ask you a question to go back to Michelle's question about the one cart. Say we do the 95-gallon cart. I know in the proposal it said somewhere between 66 and 95 gallon. But when you were talking originally, you said someone can get extra garbage picked up for the price of buying an extra container. But when Michelle asked the question, it seemed to me that you said you get one container and that's it. So I'm confused as to what is the correct answer there.
The correct answer is what you want it to be. Essentially, it's up to the town. Many towns do not allow second carts. Some towns do. But what they will do in that structure is the resident would buy the second cart. As far as the size of the cart initially, some towns say you're only going to get 95 gallon. That's it. I don't want to buy two sets of carts. Other towns give residents that flexibility. I couldn't fill a 66 gallon cart if I tried. And we just don't we do about 13 gallons a week we put out. But if you need extra, you can buy the cart and get extra. And that would be up to you. And then there would be a price attached to that cart that's retail.
Right. So we would have to address that in our bid specs if we wanted to allow some number of, well, we wouldn't know how many would do it, but to allow people to buy a second cart, then the vendor would have to give a proposal allowing for, they would have to estimate how often that would happen.
Yeah. And I will tell you from my experience, it falls way below 10% of residents that want extra carts.
Yeah.
Especially, don't forget, you're offering an organics program of 22 gallons. Now, and I don't know that you could fill 22 gallons worth of food waste. I hope not, but on an average home. But if you take that 22 out, let's just use some math, right? And you already have bins out for your recycling, of which paper is going to be the biggest bulk item that goes out for recycling in your recycling system. Somewhere between 20 and 50 gallons is already consumed. And then you still have another 95.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to find it unusual to have people need an additional cart, but you'll give them that option. That reduces a lot of complaining. And then what we have found, ironically, Mayor, is some people buy carts and say, but I don't need it, because they realize they no longer need the extra capacity.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mark, I'll just jump in to say one of the things that was discussed is you always need extra carts, like just in case it gets hit by, so we wouldn't be ordering exactly 7,000 anyway. We'd do some overage and we'd add in, if we decide to go that route, that extra, 10% or whatever Wayne would recommend. So
That's
Thank
correct.
you. Thank you. Michelle?
Sorry. I just wanted to add into that. I think it would be really interesting to see if there is any way to do something with the central business district. It's pretty messy down there. I know that they pay for their own trash pickup, but maybe we can look at that as being part of this and figuring that out, because automating it and making it uniform and cleaner would certainly go a long way to cleaning up some of that. That's it. Thanks.
Okay.
That's what I meant.
Leticia?
Yeah, I don't really have any questions. I think they're pretty much my colleagues asked and they were answered. But just a comment, listening to all this, I get the sense that there's going to be some confusion, and so we'll need to have a lot of good educational outreach, which I know Sustainable Princeton's pretty good at that. So I'm not concerned about that, but also in multiple languages, in order that everyone in our community understands how the program will work.
Okay, good point. All right, any other council questions or comments? All right, seeing none, I believe there's a consensus that we want Wayne to move ahead with coming up with an actual spec and following, and then we will follow and that'll come back to us, and it'll follow the calendar that was on one of the slides. Okay.
Thank you all very much for your input.
Thank you.
Wayne, thank you very
you.
much.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you, Christine.
Wayne.
Have a good rest of the meeting.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Christine, too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you both.
Okay. Next up is the Community Center Feasibility Task Force presentation.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if I can, I will share my screen. And so I am going to introduce the task force. So this is the Community Center Feasibility Task Force. I think it was about 6-8 months ago, maybe a little longer than that, since we started meeting. The task force members really represent a lot of our community partners, a lot of people from the community names you'll recognize. We have from the Y, from Health and Human Services, the library, the school, the Senior Resource Center, Pinell Center, PCH, PHA, I should say Princeton Community Housing, Princeton Housing Authority. And if I've missed anybody, the names are there. And it's been a really great mix of people, some great conversations, and really a lot of research and work that people have done. So I just will refresh that the mission of the task force was in our master plan. Oh, I'm sorry. I should be doing this as a, let me just start that over again. Sorry about that. Our master plan identifies the need for the creation of a community center to serve Princeton residents. Our task force worked together towards a focused outcome designed to assist the mayor and council with the planning and decision-making regarding the potentiality of doing a community center. So we evaluated, among other things, recreational and public services, future and existing programs that would likely be accommodated within a community center, and generally the space needs for existing and future programs, where we visualized, these types of services in this manner, and we included researching examples of other community centers in New Jersey. So the task force tonight, some of the members are here as presenters and participants. So I am going to introduce them as they will be speaking. The first thing we're going to talk about is that the task force identified several areas. We prioritized them and broke them down into two main categories. So the first category is needs that we identified that are not currently being met and in Princeton, and the second is needs that are not fully being met in their current location. So they may include needs where the facilities are inadequate and or they may not be long-term viable options. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bill Wakefield, who's going to present the next slides. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Michelle. And good evening to everybody. The services that we're going to cover tonight, you should understand that there's a range of perceived availability as we talk about these. In some cases, the services are available, but the access is limited by transportation or affordability. So when we do further study, we want to consider the options of subsidizing either transportation or membership. Also, in many cases, the community center would not necessarily be providing services separately from organizations that provide them now, but simply creating space for those organizations to provide easier access to their clientele. So first, the needs are not being met. The clearinghouse, currently, the Human Services Office provides a central source of information on the services that are available for residents. However, there are some shortcomings of the current office and possible benefits of a community center. First, many residents may not even be aware of that office, and its location may also be intimidating to some. And a location that was known to provide a range of services more convenient to many of the residents would be a much more logical place for people to stop in to look for information. And the second part of it is that the current office doesn't really have the capability to do a comprehensive needs assessment for individuals and families who may need many different services. For example, housing and food and many more. So having a social worker that could be there to actually make a coordinated assessment of needs and do follow-up would help. Next, daycare for seniors. Currently, the Senior Resource Center does not have the space, the staff, or funding to provide the continuous caregiving that some seniors need in a daycare environment. These types of services are available in the area, but for many seniors may be cost prohibitive. So here again, an option to providing these services at SRC would be to arrange for subsidies from government or private sources. The Workers Center. The Workers Center right now, there is no resource for day workers and for others, particularly immigrants who are working in or looking for low-level jobs. Currently, the day workers, as many of you probably know, congregate on Witherspoon Street. and are picked up there by companies or individuals who need short-term help. People also find employment in food services and elsewhere, often through word of mouth in the community. But both of these categories of workers require or don't have first, job training. They don't have protection as a group from wage theft and other exploitation. And they don't have an organized job bank to link employers and employees more efficiently and more safely. Next, homeless assessment services. Although homelessness is not a widespread problem in Princeton, we do not have a resource to deal with the cases that we do have. The community center could offer anything from short-term place to stay to referral and transportation to homeless facilities that are provided by the county. This could be handled as part of the clearinghouse function. Now let me turn to community needs that we judge are being partially met. Senior programming, the senior resource principally, but the WISE and the library and others provide what we consider to be pretty much a full range of services for seniors. One shortcoming is that the transportation for seniors, particularly from the senior residence complexes, to access the services, and also to have transportation to other commercial services is a shortcoming. This situation may also be aggravated if the SRC moves out of the Suzanne Patterson Center. Daycare. Although daycare is available in Princeton, affordable daycare for economically disadvantaged families is not, and a community center could be a place to provide it. Pre-K programs. The Princeton Public Schools can obtain funding from the state for pre-K, but the space specification standards from the state are such that many churches and other spaces don't qualify to meet those standards. So if we had a community center, we could make space that is appropriate to those standards and include it. After-school youth programs. Although there are after-school sports and other activities, there are limited safe places for middle and high school students to just hang out. A place where they could receive counseling or referrals to other services that they might need, and have a place that they would have access to games and food and computers, et cetera, particularly for kids who don't have a parent at home because the parents are out working. Mental health and substance abuse. The community center could provide space for organizations that provide counseling, because there's a lot of them now. But some of those organizations don't have space at all. For example, the Latin American Legal Defense and Education Fund, it doesn't have a place, or others that could use additional and more accessible space. Community kitchen. We all know there's a lot of services providing food, but this would be a place for facilities for some of the existing services that do not have an actual kitchen, or, and maybe more importantly, to have storage facilities, and also to be a place for coordination of all of those existing food services. It would also be a place, the kitchen would be, to provide food to groups who are using the community center, like the after-school programs and pre-K. Emergency shelter. Currently, emergency shelter has been provided on a somewhat ad hoc basis in the municipal buildings. A community center could use all of the existing space used for other services in an emergency and provide power, food, showers, first aid, emergency medical, and other services. And finally, health clinics. The community center could be a central venue for emergency vaccinations, such as were provided by the health department during COVID. So that's our inventory. Thanks for your attention, and we'll move forward.
Thank you, Bill. So next, Leticia, you're going to jump in and cover this because Erica's not here tonight.
Yes, thank you. But I do want to go back regarding, if you can go, is it possible to go back a slide or not?
I think I
If
can.
not, I can remember what is. Yes, regarding the health clinics, as I think as we're all aware that our health department has been doing a great job of providing immunizations, not just for COVID, but also flu vaccines and throughout the pandemic. And from what I recall, what this was identified as being partially met, not to say that the health department isn't doing this, but I think the thought was that if we had a central location where these services could be provided, and also if there was additional funding to provide even more. So it wasn't that need wasn't being met, but we were looking at more at having a central location where we could enhance that.
All right, thanks, Leticia.
Yes, thank you. So because Erica's not here, I'm presenting on her behalf of the Human Services Commission during the pandemic, starting in 2020. A subcommittee of the Human Services Commission examined changes in service needs and access to services that became apparent during the COVID pandemic. In order to collect the necessary data and feedback, the subcommittee organized listening sessions, and they also distributed provider surveys. More than 50 community partners participated in the needs assessment survey, and they included providers of educational and enrichment programs, food and housing programs, early education and childcare, mental health and social supports, health and emergency services, employment, immigration, cultural and recreational services, as well as senior programming. Those were the service providers that participated in the survey. After the data and feedback was analyzed, the findings showed that of the population being served, nearly half were families with children. Fortunately, during the pandemic, that segment of the population was generally well served, because there was more funding available to provide for families with children. Adolescents and young adults showed some increase in service need. So there were populations that we hadn't not been accessing services before, but the need became more apparent during the pandemic. There was also increased need among older, single and disabled adults, as well as immigrants and individuals experiencing homelessness. It was determined that the food and nutritional needs were most pressing and generally well met in Princeton. I'm not saying part thanks to the Human Services Department, who formed a food insecurity task force and coordinated among all our the food pantries and other providers such as Share My Meals, the Mobile Food Pantry, Arm in Arm, and others, who came together to collaborate and coordinate their efforts. There was also a need for housing and rental assistance became acute. Access varied as assistance programs resolved some of the needs, such as housing assistance, but it remained difficult among those not qualifying for public benefits. Childcare needs became acute as well. Parental employment and educational needs became an issue. Not surprisingly, there is a growing evidence of need for mental health and social supports. During the survey also demonstrated that there as existed before. It was highlighted during the pandemic that inequities exist. The pandemic highlighted that there were pre-existing inequities, that although internet access and virtual technologies help continue some of the services, it was also apparent that there was a barrier for those who are technology challenged or were without access. The results of the survey make it apparent that new levels of coordination and communication among service providers are needed in order to respond rapidly and effectively to changing circumstances and needs. And it is also apparent that innovative and individualized means to reach those in need in accordance with their circumstances and abilities can benefit from enhanced collaboration among service providers. Lastly, we want to highlight that a community center must strengthen existing services and help fill existing gaps. And a community center can also provide new avenues of communication and collaboration, as well as opportunities for outreach, and most importantly, equitable access for members of our community.
Thank you.
And with that, yeah, I'll pass it on to, is it Maria Huega?
Yeah, Maria's next. Maria, you're up. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to talk about the various, we had the opportunity, some of us, to talk to other community centers in the area and see what was being done. And we saw that there are several models being used. One model is where community centers that were a product of a collaboration between county and the municipality. Such was the case of the Ewing Township, which has two separate buildings or facilities that work as community centers. One is the Ewing Senior and Community Center, which is located in what was a former Jewish center that was built in the 50s and was turned over to the county for the purposes of historical preservation. It was constructed by a famous architect. I can't think of his name right now. Can was the last name. And it was the architecture of some of the buildings was worthy of restoration and preservation, and the county undertook or actually funded the refurbishing of the facilities and turned over the community center and its grounds to the township.
Sorry, you want me to move forward on the slides? Are you talking about Ewing now?
I guess so, yes. Okay,
yeah,
thanks.
okay. Yeah, sorry, because I have pictures. Okay.
Mhm.
Please tell me when to advance, please.
Thanks. I'm sorry. It has a full day, it has large grounds, outdoor pool, tennis courts, and total of 39,000 square feet of buildings. It is used both by, it's used as a community center. Roughly half of the building is used as a senior center with a separate entrance for the seniors, and the rest is used by the community at large. They do rent some of the rooms. They have a large community room and smaller rooms that they can rent out to community groups. They do so at no charge, but they do rent it out to other organizations in the area, as well as for private parties and things like that. They do use it also as an emergency shelter for emergencies. They have a standby generator that allows them to keep the power on during times in which power may be maybe down, and it serves as a warming and cooling center. They do have showers at the facility, a washing machine, and they serve around 30,000 users annually. Let's see, they do charge membership fees for certain, for the gym. They do have a gym, and they have a two-tier fee, one for residents and one for non-residents. The centers are under the umbrella of the Recreation Department. We did talk to Ted Forst, who is the current director of recreation, who did apparently work for Princeton for a while and he acknowledged that he learned some of the practices that they're using over there in Princeton. For instance, having an application for lower membership fees for low-income families. And they do have a staff of approximately 2 full-time maintenance people, plus part-time staff, a manager, and a supervisor, plus a bus driver. So transportation services, which here are handled separately, are handling you under the community center umbrella, is something that we might want to consider to also coordinate this, the current freebie or municipal bus could be coordinated from the community center. The other center is the Hollowbrook Community Center, where they have located several facilities, such as a branch of the county library, also a daycare center by CYO, both of which pay rent to the municipality for the site. They did get a grant from the county for pool and park renovations. They have another pool over there. They also have a food pantry run by one of the churches in the township. They have cited the senior nutrition program from the county, is operated out of there. So they share with us that basically their funding is a mix of county funding, grants, and rental income, in addition to municipal funding. They told us that other than salaries, which they wouldn't disclose, their total operating expenses are $116,000 a year. So this is, a model that sounds very sustainable, and something that could be looked at as a possibility.
Thank you. Anything else? I was going to move to Camden now.
We also saw, if you can you go back to
I want to keep it a little bit. I want to keep it a little bit compact here. I don't want to go too long on each of the centers.
Go ahead.
Anything else, Maria?
I was going to go back to the other models, but if you want to jump into, I think you're going to discuss this as you move forward.
Because now we're going to go to Raisa. She's going to talk about Camden, which is a different model, and then Kate's going to talk about a different model. Okay. All right. Thanks, Maria. All right. Raisa, your turn. Could you
Yes, absolutely.
Hi. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much to Michelle and for the rest of the committee who did all this fantastic work, Maria, who did all this fantastic work to get the information about these community center case studies. I wanted to specifically speak about the model of the Camden Community Center, which was a public-private partnership between Camden Municipality and the Kroc family and Salvation Army. It cost approximately $35 million to build, but it was done through the Salvation Army with a large grant from the Kroc family, built the center on municipal land that was originally a waste disposal site, and basically was able to recover the land through a brownfield grant with the Department of Environmental Protection. And basically the combination of cleanup funding from the Department of Environmental Protection, the municipal land donation, and the Kroc family donation was what was able to put together the funding for this center in this private-public partnership. So you can see here a model of what the front desk looks like. And there are some more pictures in subsequent slides. Here's a really important slide, which sort of shows the flexible meeting space area, which obviously was identified as a major need for Princeton. It's really important to have flexible rooms for meetings, for classrooms, training, after-school programs, senior gathering spaces, and youth hangout spots. And we have some phenomenal organizations with really fantastic services in Princeton, so it's really important to provide these spaces. And you can also see, this is a picture from the pool that is part of the Camden Community Center. The Olympic size indoor pool, yes. And I think you can also see that they have a fitness center as displayed here. And we go to the next slide. There's also a basketball court, which is relevant not only because of sort of the obvious for youth and sports programs, but because they've used it for special events and as room for performances. And very importantly, during COVID, it was used for vaccine clinics, which is really relevant. And if we go to the next slide, there's also a food pantry that is part of this. And as they've been able to use this food pantry to provide weekly grocery needs for hundreds of families, so that it's really relevant. It's been done through cooperative programs with Campbell's, through local grocers, and Cisco Foods. And finally, you can see a picture of the special event space from the Camden Community Center. And these are spaces that can be used for large gatherings, for breakout rooms, and for room rentals for local organizations. So again, sort of fulfilling one of the needs that we talked about, in addition to, obviously in the previous slide, what I talked about around the food pantries, really filling a crucial need in Princeton. So that is sort of some of the images and information about the Camden Community Center. And thank you so much. I will pass it off to Kate.
Thank you, Nysa. Kate, you're up. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody, or I should say good evening. Oh my gosh, where am I? I'm actually on vacation, so forgive me if I'm a little bit out of whack here. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. I am here to talk a little bit about the model, a similar public-private partnership that many communities across the country have embarked on with YMCAs in their communities. And closer to home here in New Jersey, the most recent one is the partnership between the Piscataway Community Center and the YMCA of MUSA, it's called, which stands for Metuchen, Edison, Woodbridge, South Amboy. This is an example similar in nature. In this case, the municipality had the land. They actually financed the construction of the facility, and it's the YMCA that's actually operating it. And then there's rates are set up according to residency and so forth, and the mix is worked out between the two entities. But you can see this is an outdoor play area. Splash pads are very popular for cooling kids off in the outdoors. This space is obviously designed with recreation in mind, as well as health and wellness. So a considerable amount of space is dedicated to creating a modern open facility for people to exercise and be with one another and foster a sense of connection, and obviously create a space that encourages people to keep coming back. So this is an example, much like the others, of a nice assortment of equipment you can go to, and then of course it has a pool, an indoor pool, which is certainly something that every community center features. Pools are essential in teaching children to swim, obviously, and that's a life skill, a safety skill, as well as we know at the Y, it's a big part of people's maintaining their health and wellness and combating chronic illness, as well as managing pain, which as we all get older, we know is a big part of life, but it's essential. It's a great way to take care of yourself in that respect. So that's, pools are essential. Again, reiterating what Risa had said about flexible spaces, that's essential. Why today's YMCAs are designed with lots of flex space for that reason, in part because you're serving every age group with different needs. So you can go ahead. So anyway, as I mentioned here, the Piscataway Community Center is one example of that public-private partnership, but there have been several other developments that are underway right now that I thought might be of interest. And if you want to take a look, it's worth checking it out. The city of Austin is working with the YMCA of Austin to design a community center that's going to serve that community's needs. The YMCA of the Triangle is working in Raleigh, North Carolina. And then lastly, another example that's quite interesting is the city of St. Petersburg in Florida is working with their local school district and the YMCA, and they're designing a brand new middle school that has is adjacent to, or actually connected to, a YMCA. So it can serve both purposes as a gym for a middle school and also connect with that particular group of kids, that age group. So I guess my only point about these various ventures is that there's some really innovative stuff being done. People are, I think, recognizing that these partnerships really help to leverage the resources available for both partners. You know, YMCAs have a long track record of innovative facility design and management over its 170 plus years in existence. And not only that, it has an incredible network available to it. There are over 800 YMCA associations across the country. There's the Y is part of a federation, so there's a tremendous amount of resources available to learn from one another, and the professional staff are folks who are in this for the long haul, and they know this world very well. If you want to go to the next slide, I was just going to say these are some of these benefits that I can just at a high level. As I mentioned, leveraging the private resources for fundraising, but also in the YMCA world, the advantage is that, you know, you have diverse revenue streams going forward to operate the facilities. The management experience that YMCA folks have and the expertise in that facility innovation and development, the national YMCA resources. The other thing I wanted to point out is that what's interesting about the YMCA is that, and this has been the case in its history, is that the Y really reflects its community and those community needs. So a couple examples, one here close to us is the YMCA of Greater Monmouth, which has one of the larger outpatient and psychiatric services in that area of New Jersey. And they serve children, adolescents, and families and adults. One of the more compelling stories that has always resonated with me is in Staten Island, which has one of the biggest challenges with the opioid addiction issue. The YMCA there is the largest provider of substance abuse support, which is really interesting, and that evolved after many years and then partnering with other organizations to make that happen. And then lastly, in Savannah, there is a very specialized development underway to construct a recreational and fitness center in partnership with the Salvation Army in a community there that is similar to what in Camden has been done, and the YMCA is a partner with the Salvation Army, as well as that the city of Savannah. So there's a lot of interesting things happening across the country nationwide with YMCAs and municipalities and about every imaginable variety. So it's just another option to consider. So thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kate. And yeah, it's Kim's turn. Kim, you want to jump in?
I just wanted to briefly mention, we worked with so many people on our team. There was some people who weren't here tonight: Erica DeGlau, Drew Dyson, Sanjeev Manju, Liliana Morania, Tommy Parker, Joanne Parker, Linda Suprell, Larry Spruill, Ed Druselli, and Valerie Ulrich, who all contributed to make this wonderful presentation possible. One of the needs identified by I get to be able to talk about the model of collaborative services. One of the needs identified by the task force and the Department of Human Services needs assessment was a need for a coordination of services. At the moment, there is no single place in Princeton that someone can go and say, I need help, and then be immediately connected to appropriate services. We found a wonderful example of a public-private coordination of services in Monmouth County called Monmouth Acts, assisting community through services. In 2016 or 2017, Monmouth Acts hired a company to do a comprehensive needs assessment analysis and learned that, like Princeton, they are resource rich, but there wasn't a good connection and coordination of efforts for people to get the help that they needed, and that the services were fragmented. Monmouth Acts is a collaborative impact, collective impact collaborative that brings together county employees from the Department of Human Services and community nonprofit leaders to better life in Monmouth County. Together, county government and their counterparts in the private sector are finding effective ways to meet today's human service needs. They are improving Monmouth's access to services in mental health, addiction, aging, housing, childcare, transportation, and much more. The goals of Monmouth Acts are to help residents learn about the many public and private services that are available and how to access them, to provide a more seamless approach to human services by joining strengths and eliminating duplications in public-private programs, and to create working groups called hubs to address 8 key issues identified with the needs assessment: early childhood success, positive youth development, successful aging, housing and homelessness, transportation, financial empowerment, and behavioral health. These hubs, which are integrated through the Monmouth Acts Advisory Committee, make it their mission to support individual and family success through all stages of life by supporting strong family relationships and community connection, personal safety, equal opportunity and financial security, good health and well-being, and a high quality learning and education. I'd like to add that these hubs are set up to meet needs, sort of reactive, like what are the needs of the community, but also sort of allowed to be visionary, sort of along the lines of the mission of how can we work together, each of our groups, to really meet each of these 8 identified needs. Though this is a relatively new initiative and continues to improve, they found that these points of collaboration that had been established were enabled them to pivot quickly when presented with the challenges of the 2020 pandemic. One specific need that they were particularly, that they quickly identified because of these hubs was the need for mental health services for the youth in their community. And they were able to connect youth to those services quickly because of this collaboration. Obviously it's evolving. So most of that was under the first phase. Phase 2 is having sort of a navigation, I can't remember what it's called, a navigation service. And so now they're getting it to the point that if you call a number and say, I need help, I'm worried about housing or whatever else, the person who you speak to on the phone will connect you with an organization, create a memorandum of understanding so that you will get the services you need immediately without being referred on and on. Again, like many of the other things we've mentioned, this is partially being done in Princeton or being done to an extent. We have a housing stability coalition, but this I feel is like a great path forward to bringing it all together. All right, the task force conclusions. To form an exploratory steering committee to look at various options of partnering with community organizations, incorporate the results of the facilities analysis, and find funding resources and estimate operating costs.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. So this was many months of biweekly meetings. The task force, as Kim mentioned, I remiss in mentioning everybody. Everyone, played a role from bringing their ideas to the table, helping with the spreadsheet, helping everyone input into a spreadsheet what the needs were. We boiled it down and came up with those that were met, not met, and partially met. Those that were met, mostly there was a lot of partially met. So the bottom line is that this is a visioning. I think looking at all the different possibilities, how we can partner with community partners, how we can make this happen financially, and what we would like to see. So I guess now we'd like to take some questions, open it up to see what the council and others, if you have any questions for the task force, and see what you think about next steps. Thanks.
Thanks, Michelle. Council, comments, questions at this point? Mia.
Thanks so much, everyone, for that presentation. That was a lot to absorb. I think I'm going to have to watch it all again the second time. But I'm just wondering, in terms of, there are so many different models. And so one question is how you're going to winnow down which model would make most sense for Princeton. And then the other is, the Y is the center that I'm most familiar with, because it has basically been our community center. But I thought that our Y recently formed a partnership with another entity. And so I'm wondering if that precludes us partnering with you in one of the partnerships that you mentioned, the types of partnerships that you mentioned.
Kate, you're muted.
Sorry, the vacation brain again, sorry. So you're speaking to in terms of precluding, like if that means, so yes, to just clarify, so the Princeton YMCA is now in fact a branch of the Greater Somerset County YMCA. And as part of that consolidation, there is certainly, everybody would agree that if there was interest in having a conversation, that conversation could happen. It's not to say, no, that's not even, if what I'm understanding you asking, is it that would change the equation in some way, that we're not in a position to have those discussions. If that's what I, okay.
Yeah, because you were talking about, WISE partnering with local municipalities. And I know you recently formed another partnership with an external entity. So I didn't know if that meant that then.
So that's just to clarify, that is not really external, because it's in our Y world. So we're just part of a larger Y family, if that makes sense. And the conversations for sure would continue. And I should mention that while I'm no longer the CEO of the Princeton Family YMCA, I am working for the larger association for the purpose of having these conversations. So there's an interest, and certainly would be happy to have that conversation.
You're still in the Y world. Got it.
I am very much, you can't get rid of me. I just can't seem to go away. Sorry.
Okay, Leighton?
I just want to give a shout out and thanks to everyone and anyone who had any part in this very informative and comprehensive presentation. As someone who was born and raised here in Princeton, going to the YMCA, learning how to swim, going to the youth center and hanging with my guys and my girls, and the Arts Council, which was the former colored YMCA. It's hard to look at this and not to wish and put this on the top of a wish list for Princeton. The diagrams and the illustrations were fantastic. And I do hope that some way, perhaps working with the university and other public-private partnerships, that we will find a way to create something as meaningful as this for the children that are here now and for those that will be coming in the not so distant future. Thank you.
Thanks, Leighton. Eve?
Yeah, I echo, a lot of what my colleagues have said. This is a really exciting prospect, and I know how much work must have gone into this. So to all of those from the task force that are here with us and those that couldn't make it, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks. I do have some questions. So one question is about duplication of services. I mean, the Y has a pool that's open to the community. The Y provides, I think, sliding scales. Maybe I'm wrong about that. So I want to make sure that we, are not duplicating services that we already have. Obviously, we should, and I'm not saying maybe there's a need for another pool, for example. So that's one issue. And Kate, I'm gonna finish real quick, and then Princeton is I may not know enough about some of the other places, but Princeton is a very high-priced real estate market, and so I want to know, like, we're not going to attract, the crock money. I read that's the McDonald's family. I read I don't know if it was a biography, but a story about that once. It was very interesting. But they're not going to come to a Princeton. They're going to want to put their money more in some place where they can get a higher payoff in terms, this sounds crass, in terms of environmental justice, in terms of, addressing a community, such as Camden or Newark or something like that, where the needs are vaster maybe than Princeton. So I guess those are my two questions. Like, certainly like Research Triangle and maybe, Metuchen, Piscataway, et cetera. Those are more similar to us, but I want to make sure that, to the extent that, as we move forward, and I certainly would endorse, moving on to the next proposed step, that we keep those two things in mind, the not duplicating services and the making sure that we're coming up with something that's realistic for, a high value real estate community such as Princeton, where some things that work. And I know you all know that, but I would love to have just some response about what your thoughts are about those two issues.
I don't know if anybody else wants to also address it, but absolutely, we don't want to duplicate, and that's why we took great pains to really outline all of the things that, all of the services, all of the needs and all the services that are already out there, so we can, really, alleviate any type of duplication and really enhance, that's where the partially, met needs are, and enhance those. I mean, we are, really aware of, the needs, say, for instance, for, the Suzanne Patterson Center, replacement eventuality and that possibility and things like that. So we looked at all that. In terms of land value, I think when we get a little further in our agenda tonight, this is exactly why we need to do the facilities analysis, because we really need to see what we own as a town, what we can what we can do with that. So I think that moves into the next phase. So I think doing these things concurrently is really smart, because we can, there's a lot of moving parts, and I think now delving further into understanding how these partnerships financially have worked in other towns, I think we can really start to see if there's a way forward with community partners to do something like this, because we're Princeton and we should be able to have a phenomenal, Camden-like center.
Yeah, I would like to just jump in. I mean, I think overall, thank everybody on the task force for all their work and everything. Couple things. It would be helpful if the PowerPoint that was shown this evening was sent to everybody, because the one in the package has the older background, which is really hard to read. So that would be great if everybody could see that, and maybe we could put this newer one up on our website also, just to make it easier for people to refer to. The idea of having some sort of steering committee, I think, makes sense. And then, I think we have to agree to who'd be on the steering committee and kind of how the steering committee sets up for all the different committees under it, because you'd really want to get input from a lot of the existing entities and agencies and services in Princeton and or that service Princeton and in the county and try to really understand how they all work together. And then there's got to be some list of priorities because we can't do everything in the next year or 2 years. So where are the ones you aim for first? You know, there's a certain thing called money and you only have so much of that. But, you know, you do partnerships with the Y, with the library, with whoever. How do we do, does human services do more? So anyway, there's a lot of thought and detail that's got to go into move this idea forward. But anyway, you guys have laid a good groundwork, and I just want to make sure that wherever we go going forward, we don't get too tied to, we have to solve all these things in a physical building that we provide. I think what we have to do is say, how do we provide services? And if you think of how do we coordinate all the different services between all the different entities and make sure people have a way to find out about them, then you can kind of figure out, does it go into some new structure somewhere? Or are we leveraging existing structures, buildings, whatever? So I just want to make sure that the focus doesn't get too narrowly focused and that it's so broad, wide enough that we just allow ideas to flow and figure out how things can create and move forward, short term and long term. Leighton.
Thanks, Mayor. And just kind of to piggyback on what Eve said, I understand that Camden has a great deal more of an underserved population than Princeton, but I would be cautious to make the assumption that simply because Princeton is a wealthy community with a great bandwidth, that entities like the Kroc family or other families might not invest in Princeton's underserved population. And that's why I'm also saying that we should look at every opportunity, as Mark said, county funding, institutional funding, business funding on the corridor. There is money all over Princeton, in and around Princeton. And I guess would not make the assumption that that we have so much money here that people won't help us out. I think they would. Thank you.
I agree.
Yep. Thank you. Leticia?
Yes, I just wanted to add that in order to better understand what the existing needs are and how we could better serve our community, I mentioned as part of my portion of the presentation was the needs assessment survey that was conducted by the Human Services Department. I may have mentioned in previous announcements, previous meetings, that the Human Services Commission will be coming before council in the near future with their presentation, more detailed presentation on the results of their survey, but also wanted to suggest that whether it's part of the steering committee, it's going to be key that we have our Health and Human Services Department take part in being more involved as to what coordinating what needs the Human Services Department and Health Department already are providing and how we could coordinate the efforts with our community partners.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, Leticia. And we also have Corner House, which is, a municipal agency. You can see PCH was already on the task force. So, I mean, to me, that's a good example of how we could leverage some of the players that are already involved, but how they can help reach out. Princeton Mobile Food Pantry had a representative on the task force, but how they can help us reach out to all the entities that serve all these different areas and help bring together information so we can increase the coordination and then how we figure out whatever it is we do going forward.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. And that I just want to mention that Kate did confirm that the Y does do the financial assistance for people for their different programs and everything. Okay.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions on this? If not, we thank everybody, and we're going to have to, I think we have to give some serious thought as to how exactly what the next step is. I prefer that we actually think it out and then set it up as I'm not sure how we quite get there, but anyway, I think we need to have some conversations between council and staff and some of the entities around town to try to get a grasp on how to exactly set up the steering committee.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other questions? We're good.
All right, so we have a general consensus that we will find the path to move forward to the steering committee stage. Okay. All right, seeing nothing else on this. Again, thank you to everybody that joined for this specific discussion. We appreciate your time this evening very much.
Thank you. Thanks to the task force, everyone. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everyone. Great job.
Thank you.
Okay. Let's see, we have two public hearings on ordinances. The first one is Ordinance 2022-13, an ordinance of the Municipality of Princeton, amending Article 6, sewer connection fees of Chapter B 34, sanitary sewer system of the municipal code. Now, I believe we need to have a discussion as to either table or postpone this, and there's a difference between the two, but maybe somebody could explain.
I think we don't want to carry it because we're not sure that we'll be able to have all the information that we need by the next council meeting. I hope we will, but my understanding, Trishka, is that if we table it, then we don't have to reintroduce, but we don't also have to, if we need to, if we're not ready by the next council meeting, then we can skip over. Is that correct?
It is, but you would need to re-advertise the public hearing since it was advertised for tonight. You're not carrying it to a date certain. You would need to run a new advertisement in the newspaper and just make sure that the word gets out about the new date for the public hearing.
Can I make a question though? Could we carry it and give ourselves 4 weeks and then to avoid?
Sure. Yeah.
this?
You can carry it to a specific date and it doesn't have to be your next meeting. I think just as long as the public is on notice of when it's going to take place.
Well, we need to advertise either way because we're changing the, right?
Since tonight is scheduled for the public hearing, if you announce specifically tonight when you are carrying, the date that you're carrying it to, you will not need to re-advertise, but you have to give a specific date tonight.
Well, why don't we carry it to the next meeting and hope that we're ready? And if we're not, then we could carry it again, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say if I'm
legally you can, whether as
Yeah,
a practical matter you want to is a different question.
if I'm the public, I don't know that,
Well,
I mean,
June 13th is 3 weeks because we don't have, right? It's one.
can we at least mention why we're doing this?
Yes, I would. I was going to do that. I'm just never quite sure what we're allowed to say at which point. So the chair of the sewer committee is not available tonight and asked that he would like to be part of the conversation, and so specifically requested that we not hold the hearing tonight. And in addition, there was a discussion at the last sewer meeting which engendered some questions that need to be answered, and I think that would be done by June 13th. I don't think that will be a problem, but Eve, do you have I really think that I would like to make a motion to carry it to June 13th.
Dee has a comment, always a valuable one.
Yeah, thank you. I would just feel that we should just do it to June 27th. Then
Okay.
I think that would give enough time, and I can put it in the newspaper that the public hearing is being carried to June 27th. And then if it's not ready on the 27th when we had the public hearing, we'll carry it again.
Totally fine with that.
Right, unless there's a pressing, time constraint that I'm not aware of to do it earlier, that makes sense. And, I think there are some discussions that need to happen before, and I want to make sure that everybody has time to be fully briefed and to think about the related issues. So, Dee, that's a good suggestion.
I'm sorry.
So yeah, I'm just agreeing with what Dee's suggestion is, unless Mia has some reason why we need to act more quickly.
I mean, I don't think we want to. We do need to move forward, and we don't want to let this just continue on, but I think Dolores always has very wise suggestions, and I think this is one of
Although
them.
I just thought of a good reason, which is I won't be here on the 27th.
I
But,
should mention, I already mentioned that I won't be here on the 27th either, so that's two of us.
I have a suggestion. I don't know if this is, Tricia is going to yell at me. We have a meeting on the 28th. Could we just meet on the 28th instead? Leticia, you may still be away then. I don't know.
Yeah, I will be.
Yeah.
Well, we just introduced the budget and said that the hearing is the 27th. I don't know if that can change.
Well, so we can either, okay, so we go to the June 27th or go to July 11th. I can't imagine that there's anything in this ordinance that is that pressing that's going to dramatically change what happens, whether it's the June 27th or July 11th. Is there some detail we think that's in there?
There are some significant time constraints because there are other areas of there are other things that the municipality is involved with, and you know, people need clarity on what these rates are.
Why don't we go to June 13th then?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we can go drop back to June 13th and just.
If it doesn't happen, we'll deal with it then.
Yeah.
Who is, so I just want to make sure if we're going back to the 13th, who are the people that need to find the answers to the questions? Are they members of our staff? And is this something that we can ask between Bernie and whoever? What else is on their list, and are they going to be able to get this done?
Jim Purcell is one of them. Both of our attorneys, David Goldfarb, the chair of the sewer committee, there are some questions about how Stony Brook assesses its connection fees or doesn't. There's some discussions that need to happen with Stony Brook among our attorneys and staff.
Okay.
That came out of a very lengthy sewer committee meeting. There are some fundamental, underlying issues about how we assess our sewer that need to be resolved. And there's some pretty fundamental questions.
My gut right now is I don't know why we don't put it off to July 11th. If we're worried we're going to be missing 2 council members on the 27th, trying to say we're going to be ready for June 13th, I think if you have to resolve certain matters with Stony Brook Regional Sewage Authority, no knock on them, but I'm just saying that's a lot of back and forth.
Well, I think there has been already a lot of back and forth, and I think, and it resulted in this ordinance. But then there were a couple questions that this ordinance was presented at the last sewer committee meeting, and David Goldfarb raised a couple questions, which may or may not be significant. If they're not, then we absolutely would be ready to go on the 13th.
Okay.
And he actually requested us to postpone by 1 meeting, not longer. So I think that, that's what we should.
Okay, no, that's great to hear. Thanks for that detail. Leighton.
Mayor, and with all due respect, I mean, we just heard Dolores say that the 27th would give her what I thought she considered ample time to get everything together. Has that changed, or are we being a little preemptive?
That's fine, Leighton. I was just trying to give individuals more time that they needed. But if they're looking at June 13th, then that's fine. I'll just put in the newspaper that the public hearing is carried to June 13th.
Leighton, the problem is that we're missing Eve and Leticia on the 27th, which is a third of our council. That's part of the problem.
Okay.
Okay. Mia, are you making the motion, or who's?
I am.
Okay.
I am making the motion to carry to the 13th.
Thank you. Eve is making a second. Okay. I'm sorry, this would be a roll call vote then.
Okay.
I think, Mayor, you can do a voice vote probably since you're just carrying the
Yes,
hearing
we're
date,
just
but I'll
carrying-
defer to Dolores on this one.
That's fine. Either way, it's fine with me. All right.
Let's just do a roll call. I feel I'd rather err.
Okay. I'm about to do it. Okay.
Thanks.
Ms. Perone Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
Yes.
Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Okay. We'll talk about sewers on June, or whenever we just agreed to, June 13th. Thank you. All right, up next is a public hearing on ordinance 2022-14, an ordinance by the Municipality of Princeton regarding accessory structures and accessory dwelling units, modifying the definitions of attic and floor area, and amending the code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974, and the code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968. Is there a motion? Mia, thank you. Is there a second?
I'm actually making a motion to table this. Yeah, and we could carry or table it, but since we're carrying the one, that makes June 13th pretty heavy. I would be happy to, and then we have the same issue with the 27th, but just to explain, there have been a number of people involved with crafting this modified ADU ordinance, which makes some changes to the original ordinance, chief of whom was David Cohen, who I didn't realize was not going to be here for the hearing. Another of whom is Derek, the zoning officer, who I don't think is here. And the third of whom was Michael Laplace, who is no longer with us. So, and I think at least Derek and David need to both be here for the hearing.
Okay. All right, so that's a motion. Is there anyone on council that wants to second the motion? Okay, I think Leighton beat Eve by a millisecond. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any other questions or comments on the motion to table? I'm sorry, Mia, was there a date that you were suggesting in that motion?
I think if we table it, then we don't have to come up with a date. But I would have said the 27th, except I'm uncomfortable with two members of council being absent. So I'm fine with doing it for July 11th. Was that the next one? But I don't know. Trishka, do we need to specify a date if we're tabling?
Yes. No.
If you're tabling, no, but it does kind of leave the public hanging in terms of when it might or might not come back versus continuing the public hearing to a specific date.
So how about if we aim for July 11th?
Right. Mia, is there any reason we just wouldn't do the next meeting, the June 13th meeting?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that's when we have the sewer financial planning, and now we have this other sewer ordinance. And I think, did somebody say the capital budget is?
The cap budget. Yeah, we have to go through that June 11th.
So it just seems like there's a lot, again, unless there's real time factors.
Well,
I'm sorry, can't we just do it June 27th? We're still having a meeting that day. I mean, we'll have 4 of us for a vote, but.
It's really more like I really am uncomfortable doing it with just 4. It's much more, it's really almost, in retrospect, we should have done a work session because there's a lot of community commentary and input. And I think we need the whole council here. It's a pretty significant discussion.
I'm wondering if there's things on the agenda for the 13th that could be put off instead of this. Because if you're anyone that lives where some number of these have been built recently, you really want the ordinance changed sooner than later.
Yeah.
Because there are some people really taking advantage of loopholes they've created by interpreting the ordinance in a way that it was never intended. So the longer we wait to pass the ordinance, the more chance for other applications to be put in that would exist under the existing ordinance, right? They'd go by the existing ordinance as opposed to something that gets passed after their application's in. So I think there's a need for moving on this pretty quickly.
I understand what you're saying, but I think it takes a long time to get into the pipeline, and it has been, I think, almost 2 years, and there are 8 or 9 total. So I'm hard pressed to think there's going to be double that in the next 2 weeks. But I'm totally open to if we can move stuff around and do it on the 13th, that's fine too. I'm just wondering if maybe, given that we have so much important business in the next month, if we might want to consider finding another date instead of the 27th, so that we can have another full council meeting with everyone present.
Can't be another date, though. We still have to meet on the 27th because we just did the intro and we announced that the hearing is going to be the 27th. But we could do another meeting, which we usually do. We have an extra date, don't we, on the calendar?
That's what the 28th is. I mean, I would be there, but Leticia wouldn't. So we'd still be a maximum of 5. I mean, we could try to find another date, but we could take that offline, maybe. I think nobody wants to listen to us compare calendars.
No, they don't.
I do it very well, though. I'm very entertaining. So
I would like to suggest we push this to June 13th, and then we look at the things that were lined up for the 13th and see if there's 1 or 2 that we could move. 1 or 2 of the other things.
I'm fine.
Yeah,
I'm fine with that.
me too.
Okay, so, sorry, Mia, could you restate your motion with the date inserted, just so I don't want to.
Okay. Well, if we're going to do it June 13th, then we don't have to table, we can carry.
Carry it, yes.
So I'm making a motion to carry this to June 13th.
Okay, and Leighton, you're still good with the second? Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments? All right, so the motion's to carry to June 13th. Dolores, can we just do a roll call vote again?
Yes. Ms. Perone Lambros,
Yes.
Ms. Niedergang,
Yes.
Ms. Fraga,
Yes.
Ms. Sachs,
Yes.
Mr. Nolan.
Yes.
Okay, and there were two emails that had commentary on this, but since we're not doing it tonight, we'll just hold those emails, and if those people are not present at the 13th, then we'll have their emails to read, just so people know we're not ignoring the emails that came in for this topic. Okay, why don't we jump to resolutions? 22-164, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing a professional services agreement in the not to exceed amount of $208,100 with H2M Architects and Engineers, Inc. for a municipal facilities assessment study. This was carried from the May 9th, 2022 council meeting. Michelle, is that a motion or?
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a comment, but maybe after we've moved this and Justin has a chance to speak.
Yep. Okay, Eve, is that a second? All right, moved by Michelle, seconded by Eve. Jump back to Michelle for your comment, and then we'll see who else has comments.
I can speak after Justin if Justin wants to go ahead and introduce it. Go ahead, Justin.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I wanted to give a little background on this municipal facilities assessment study first, since it's been going on for a little bit. There's a new memo in your packet. I'm basically going to summarize that. I'll try to be quick. Everyone already looks pretty spent. So first, with just kind of how we got here. Secondly, with what this study is. And then third, the consultant that we chose and how we did that. This a study of the municipal facilities, mainly 400 Witherspoon and Monument Hall, was, I believe, identified as a council goal in 2021 last year. That led to an RFP, request for proposal, in December of last year, with a deadline in January of this past January. There was a bit of a pause, and then staff looked at the 8 submissions we got. So the assessment study was broken into 2 main components. The first was an analysis of the 400 Witherspoon Street kind of complex, including the parking lot and some of the recreation facilities over there, the police station, and really an effort to consolidate municipal staff from Monument Hall over to 400 Witherspoon, and also just to look at some other where employees are in other properties as well, but mainly those 2 buildings. The second task is that the consultant would do an analysis of all of the municipal facilities throughout town, and including the former Valley Road School owned by the school district. So we have some project deliverables, including existing conditions analysis, future facility needs for each municipal department, current deficiencies at 400 Witherspoon, expansion and renovations that might be necessary to accomplish putting the two buildings into one, and just whatever requirements we would need to get us there, as well as that detailed matrix of all of our public facilities and how some of those might be consolidated or moved as well. Administration and planning staff met, and we looked over the 8 proposals that we've received. And we chose H2M out of Parsippany, New Jersey. They're an architecture and engineering firm. Their cost proposal was $208,100. It was actually the second lowest of the 8 we received, but their quality was what got them to where they were. That just kind of was a bonus at the end. And they've said they still have the capacity, and if this is chosen, or if you go through this tonight, we could get started with this as soon as possible.
I would just add, Justin, I think that the highest ranging proposal was around $375,000.
It was actually slightly higher. It was just under 400,000.
Yeah. Okay.
So almost double.
Right.
Thank you.
Eve. I'm sorry. I forgot. Yeah, Michelle, sorry. Go ahead.
You're right. Justin, thank you. That was very, very comprehensive, and I really appreciate it. I know how hard the staff has worked to put this together. And this is something that's been in our goals to really look at and understand. We can't really move forward on things until we really understand exactly where we are. And we do have a lot of really prime real estate, but it's underutilized in a lot of places. So we have many goals in mind here. We want to consolidate staff to one facility if possible. We didn't mention, but the John Street Public Works INO is not in a great location, but they desperately need facilities, which they don't have. But rather than building and investing in one area, we really need to take account of everything that we have. We need to decide what to do with Monument Hall as another underutilized space, and really take stock of everything that we have, because we could do, I think we could do a lot better, really managing our facilities and managing the monies that we are, tasked with really, being able to manage better and manage these properties. So I really think that this is a super important top priority. Yeah, it's a lot of money, but down the road, when you look at the amount of real estate that we're sitting on, and the property value that we have, and that it's underutilized, I think that, this is going to be a really smart, wise investment for our future. And if we can find a community center in all of that too, well, that would be a little silver lining there. But anyway, thank you very much for your hard work, engineering, planning, everyone who's put into it. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Eve?
Well, that was very embarrassing. It wouldn't unmute. Yeah, thank you, Justin, and thank you to rest of the planning and engineering staff for working on this. One of my questions was actually, Michelle, going to be about John Street and whether this might yield some results in terms of giving our Department of Public Works staff, a more, unfortunately, the conditions they're working in are really tough. And that's a very high priority, I think, for all of us, is to give them working conditions that show that we value them. So I'm glad to see that's included. My question was a more general one, Justin. So, well, first of all, looking over the proposal, the number struck me as really high until I looked over the proposal and saw everything that was in there, and then like the value that we were getting for the money seem to make a lot of sense. But my question is about, I guess, resiliency and sustainability. It's mentioned a little bit in there, but I'd like to see that, as this assessment is done, and I don't know how integral to the assessment it is, that those are that idea is always front and center. Are we making sure that, we're planning for resiliency in terms of floods and storms? And are we making sure that as we evaluate the HVAC system, that's heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, for those who don't like acronyms, as I don't, that, we're thinking about how to do this in the most energy efficient way. So that, again, there were a couple of mentions, but I didn't know if that was central or kind of sort of beside the point here.
Yeah, you're totally correct. I don't think it was central, but I think it's just what's going to happen no matter what. Especially, when we look at planning board applications, we hold some of the applicants to those standards. We're going to do the same for ourselves too.
Okay. Thank you. Other council questions or comments?
Thanks, Michelle, for all the work you put into pushing this forward. It is something that is so important, and we've been talking about for several years now, and you have really kept the momentum going. So thank you.
Okay. If that's it, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Ayes have it. Okay. 22181, resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton authorizing a professional services agreement with ACT Engineers, Inc. for professional engineering consulting services for the purpose of reviewing development applications and providing inspection services on behalf of Princeton's land use boards for 2022-23 in an amount not to exceed $30,000. Is there a motion? Thank you, Michelle. Is there a second? Thank you, Mia. Questions on the motion?
Does Jim and Deanna want to just give a little background on?
Yeah.
I think there's 4 of them now.
No, Jim came on screen, so I figured, yeah.
I can do that, sure. The first 3 are for the same purposes. So there's a memo that covers the first 3 for ACT Engineers, CME Associates, and Collier's Engineering and Design. They are 3 municipal engineering firms that can provide us with support in reviewing applications, but more importantly, in inspecting some of the projects that are underway. All of the compensation from that will come out of escrow funds, not out of municipal budget. So this will give us the opportunity to use their resources on an as-needed basis to supplement our staff when we get overwhelmed. And currently we have so many projects in the site developments that are under construction. It's very difficult for us to stay on top of all of that construction. So some of the first things we'll be doing is assigning some inspection staff from those organizations. What is not in the memo is that we also will probably be assigning some traffic engineering to one of the firms, because McMahon Associates, which is currently under contract with us to perform traffic reviews for site planning, was recently purchased, and the firm that purchased them is actually an applicant on a site plan development that's going to be coming in the door in a few weeks. So we have a bit of a conflict of interest there. So we'll need traffic engineering services from one of these 3 firms. So, and that's it for the next 3. And I can talk about the 4th one if you want right now, or I can wait until that comes up.
You're on a roll. Go ahead.
Okay, the 4th one is JMT, Johnson, Merriman, and Thompson for capital project inspection services to supplement staff as we look to our own capital budget, where we'll be doing resurfacing projects. We'll be reconstructing Mount Lucas Road. We'll be doing drainage projects, hopefully, and replacing culverts. And again, it's a supplemental on an as needed basis for inspection services. Those funds will be paid for out of the capital budgets for those projects. The memo cites just one project, which is Mount Lucas Road, which has sufficient funds to cover the cap of $30,000 for this year.
Thank you, Jim. Okay. Any other questions on this one?
No,
Sorry.
no, I just want to thank Deanna and Jim and the team for putting this together. I think it's really important that, you put your hand up and say, we need the extra help. We know that there is so much development happening. And when we get, next council meeting to look at the capital budget and all the capital projects and improvement projects, we don't want to kick the can forward. We want to try and get things done. So it does mean an investment. So I see this as an investment. I thank you, for putting this forward.
Eve.
Yeah, just a quick comment, echoing what Michelle said when I was reading this over. I was like, wait a minute, this is the same thing as the last one. And then I read a little more carefully, and the idea of having a team behind you of not just one, but several different firms that can step up and do this work is brilliant, really. So kudos to whichever of you or all of you that thought of this. I think it's again, a really smart way to move forward to make sure that in a time, especially when not only we are short-staffed, but many other organizations are short-staffed, that we have the capacity to shift from one to another, as assistance is needed. So thank you. Really helps us move stuff forward, and it's lovely that we're not even paying for it. So
Some of it. Okay. Leighton?
Yeah, Mayor, again, just echoing what was already said. There's no shame in our staff saying you're busy and you can't handle stuff. And congratulations on being up front and getting the help you need to move us forward.
Okay. The goal is get stuff done, even if we are government. Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. That was everybody. That one is fast. 22-182, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing a professional services agreement with CME Associates for professional engineering consulting services for the purpose of reviewing development applications and providing inspection services on behalf of Princeton's land use boards for 2022-23 and an amount not to exceed $30,000. Is there a motion on that? Eve, thank you. Michelle's got the second. Any questions or comments? Having just heard Jim's explanation. Good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. That's everybody. 22-183, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing a professional services agreement with Colliers Engineering and Design for professional engineering consulting services for the purpose of reviewing development applications and providing inspection services on behalf of Princeton's land use boards for 2022-23 in an amount not to exceed $30,000. Is there a motion on that? Leighton, thank you. Michelle's got the second. Again, any question or comment? Great. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, thank you. That's everybody. Then the final one Jim just commented on, 22-184, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing a professional services agreement with JM&T Inc. for professional engineering consulting services for the purpose of providing capital infrastructure construction, administration, and inspections for capital projects for 2022-23 in an amount not to exceed $30,000. Is there a motion? Thank you, Mia. Second to Michelle. Assuming no questions, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. 22-185, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing 2022 contract for community development block grant dental care program with, boy, I can't believe that. I'm messing up on her first name. Anyway, Dr. Tull, DDS, not to exceed $57,607. Letitia's got the motion. Is there a second? Mia's got the second. Any questions?
No, I would really like to hear Jeff provide us with some background information on this.
Sure. Jeff.
Great opportunity, I think.
Thanks, Council President. And Mr. Mayor, I also call I call the dental practice and the Dr. Tull. So this practice has stepped forward. We were, as a health department, working closely with affordable housing and human services to find a fixed dental site for low and moderate income residents. The preventative dental care has been lacking in town. There's been clinics and mobile clinics that the health department's worked with in the past, but we've never had a, kind of a primary practice for residents. So with the CARES Act funding and the CDBG funding, we are able to set up a fund that would essentially provide all preventative dental screenings and care for Princeton residents of low and moderate income households. What's great about this care is that the next closest site to Princeton that provides this is the Henry J. Austin Clinic in Trenton. They also provide a robust Spanish-speaking staff. And what's also great is the fact that this will continue through 2026 based upon the CDBG funding. We're hopeful that we'll spend down a significant portion of the funds the first year through a lot of outreach, and then we'll continue on with the dental practice as long as we have it available.
Really wonderful news, Jeff. Thank you.
Sorry, one last point. Sorry. Through our vulnerable population outreach coordinator, we identified that the one health need that was never met was that a lot of parents through qualitative feedback said that when they had to choose between dental care and health care, they provided health care, immunizations, physicals, things like that. And then as a result, their oral health would suffer. And as we all know, oral health is obviously very important for health, but it's also important for even confidence and your own mental health. So we noticed that there was a significant, when we offered something in a questionnaire about being able to provide this, there was such a huge outreach and outpouring of support that this was one of the CDBG resources, along with vision care, which you'll see in the next few months that we're trying to also set up.
Thanks, Jeff. Eve?
Yeah, I want to join Council President Fraga in commending you for this. This is, as you said, I don't think dental care, it does build confidence, but it's really, as really important to medical health as well. Problems with, with the mouth often end up causing problems in other ways. And this is so phenomenal to see. And I didn't realize it was a 5-year grant, so that's even better. Hopefully hopefully people will use the services, but hopefully we'll also have it extend for a number of years. And to Dr. Tull, you're probably not listening, but it was really heartwarming that this was a practice, in the community. They're right on Harrison Street, so it's pretty conveniently located. That they were they did not just agree to do this, but they were enthusiastic, and that is just tremendous to hear. So thank you to everyone who worked on this and made it happen.
Thanks, Eve. Leighton?
Thank you, Mayor. Jeff, thanks again. As my colleagues have noted, this is a well thought out program, and it's great for the low, very low and moderate income, as it says in the information that you provided. My question is that because this money is coming from HUD, which is obviously the Housing and Urban Development Agency, is targeting low, very low, and very, very low individuals. I would just hope that the emphasis, quite frankly, would be on residents in public housing agency in Princeton. We have 5 sites with 236 units. And as I, look to the math in the information that is presented, it says that there are 20 units per month. And over a 6-month period, that would be a total of just 120 visits. So, it's a great program. No, don't get me wrong, but over, 6 months to 20 units per month is 120 visits. So again, that's not a lot of people. I looked at the numbers of $57,607. And if you divide that by the 120 units, that's about $480 per unit or per person. So again, I think great emphasis with this funding should be placed on Princeton Housing Authority residents, and I'm sure that there is ample coordination and coordinated effort on behalf of Princeton Housing Authority to help get that done.
No, I appreciate those comments. The 20 units, obviously, as you mentioned, Councilman, have to do with the number of patients that they would see, which is a very rough estimate based upon what we would expect that CDBG requires. That said, the funding source and the ability to amend that amount depends heavily on the outreach and the number of patients that are coming through the door. So that's our number one, is trying to get as many people through there. And as Councilwoman Niedergang mentioned, Dr. Tull has been very enthusiastic about this and really is opening their doors to the practice. So we hope to get as many people through there as possible. And obviously, public housings are number one in terms of getting the word out regarding this service.
Thank you. And also, just a shout out for attaching to the affirmative action piece of the document and selecting Dr. Lecca Tull, women-owned business and minority. Thank you.
And I just want to, Dr. Tull's first name is Lecca.
Lecca.
And I should know that because I actually know Dr. Tull. And
yeah.
Trishka, thanks for jumping in and helping me remember. That's why I was doubly embarrassed when I couldn't pronounce her first name because I know her first name. So
and her son has also joined her practice.
Yeah. Leticia, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. No, I just wanted, based on Leighton's question and comments, and while I do understand the need for us to address the needs of our residents who live in public housing, I'm also concerned and wonder whether this would, our immigrant population would be eligible for this service, since they are not eligible to reside in HUD subsidized housing, if that's the only population that we would be serving through the CDBG grant would exclude them. So I just wanted to clarify whether.
No, similar to our personal protective equipment distribution plan, it just is a simple attestation, which we're trying to communicate as simply as possible. So our Spanish speaking staff are helping with that whenever those circumstances arise.
Okay, thank you.
And I do want to mention one last thing. We talk a lot about collaboration and coordination amongst departments. Between affordable housing, obviously discussing the CDBG funding, which public health has never really gotten involved with before, at least in Princeton, as far as I've known. That interaction with their office assisting with the grant and then providing the opportunity to spend and utilize these dollars for the public's good is something public health normally wouldn't have access to. So that's been a great teamwork exercise that's going to be hopefully finished up with residents getting these services. And then obviously our local health outreach coordinator, also VPOC, Vulnerable Population Outreach Coordinator, has really been assisting with a lot of this contract and making that connection with Dr. Tull and then figuring out the contract. So I do appreciate, that's Gwendolyn Kroll, who's really been supportive of this as well.
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. 22-186, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton authorizing a professional services agreement with Arcadis US Inc. for professional engineering consulting services for the purpose of developing a design alternates analysis for 6 sanitary sewage pump stations in an amount not to exceed $350,930. Eve, is that a motion? And Mia's got the second. Questions on the motion? Yeah, Eve, go ahead.
I've been watching this play out in real time at the sewer committee monthly. So I want to thank Deanna and Jim and our sewer engineer, Andrew Philippi, and the sewer manager, Dominic Itzy. This has been, really, they received a lot of bids, which was great, and went over them in a very painstaking way. And this is sort of one of the first steps of our long-term plan to revitalize this hidden but very valuable infrastructure. And Dan, I'm sure you have something else to say about that. So it's not my job to recognize you, but maybe you can recognize Deanna to chime in on this one.
I recognize her.
Thank you. So before you is an agreement with Arcadis to provide a design report and recommendations for upgrades to 6 of our pump stations. Many of these pump stations are subject to flooding and need some updates for resiliency. So Arcadis will be completing tasks like looking at wetlands, doing surveys, looking at floodplain elevations, obviously looking at the existing equipment that we have in the pump stations and what we anticipate for future growth in the area of those pump stations and providing a recommendation for improvements at each pump station. Once that work is completed and we've accepted their recommendation, the idea is we would then go into design for the various pump stations, and we don't know if we'll move ahead with a single design contract or multiple design contracts. But that's where we stand with the project. The idea also is to bring in as much as possible the same equipment to each station. Especially we found with Ida that it helps to have backup pumps for these stations, and it's definitely helpful if the stations are equipped in a similar fashion so you don't need to have backup equipment specific for each station.
Thanks, Deanna.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, it's everybody. Thank you. 22-188. No, I'm sorry, 22-187. Resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton authorizing the purchase of 1 Chevrolet pickup truck with plow at a not to exceed cost of $54,413.63 using Sourcewell contract number 0921521-NAF. Is there a motion? Mia, thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Michelle. Questions or comments on the pickup truck with plow? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, there we go. 22-188, resolution of the Mayor and Council of Princeton authorizing the award of a contract to National Auto Fleet Group via the Sourcewell contract number 091521-NAF for 4 new 2022 Ford Escape UOE SE plug-in hybrid vehicles in the amount of $141,783.76. Michelle's got the motion. Layton's got the second.
Okay.
Michelle, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I have a comment. So, I mean, first of all, I'm really glad, that we're moving in this direction with hybrid EV, for our future fleet. And I know that moving off the older vehicles and trading them in, for newer vehicles is much more cost effective from a maintenance standpoint, from a fuel efficiency standpoint. And I just, wanted to mention too that, I've been concerned for some time now. We've, had various discussions in the Finance Committee about right sizing our fleet and being sure that our vehicles, our policies, reflect the current, environment, and that, we right size our fleet. And I was, and I know somehow or another, miraculously, Deanna and her staff and her team are already way ahead of me. And she assured me that they're working on doing some kind of a program. So I don't know, Deanna, if you just want to address that briefly.
Sure. So our head mechanic, Tim Vanetta, has been looking at the fleet and reaching out to the various department heads to determine what vehicle needs they do have. In engineering, we've also instituted a pilot program to reserve vehicles. Engineering, I think, behind the building department probably has the most vehicles for use by our staff. So we have a reservation system that we're utilizing so that we can keep track of which vehicles are being used on a regular basis and how often. And then we'll be working with Tim Vanetta because he also has a fleet management system that looks at mileage and gas used in the vehicles, and we can compare our notes to see if we can come up with any vehicles that can be removed from our fleet. And we'll be working with the other department heads, like I said, in the future to make sure that they've right-sized their vehicle needs as well.
Excellent. Thank you. That's
You're
great.
welcome.
It's like a ride share, so,
Yes.
very good.
Yeah, I think it's pretty critical that we as the elected officials continue to press that a priority is to have a smaller fleet of the total number of vehicles. And as in this instance, we're buying physically smaller vehicles than vehicles that we have typically bought in the past. And that while granted, every now and then somebody needs a bigger vehicle, it's not that we need 30 or 40 bigger vehicles every day for the majority of the people. So glad we're on this road, and we just need to keep an eye on it to make sure it continues to move forward. And an extension of this is what these are hybrid vehicles, which is a step forward for us. And as we get EV infrastructure, then we'll be able to actually get more EV vehicles, but all in good time.
And I will chime in that there are grants that we're looking at that may help us, build that EV infrastructure. So hopefully we can move this forward even faster with some.
Yeah, I think we have funding sources in place for a lot of the.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Thank you.
so be it. Any other questions or comments on these great Ford hybrid vehicles? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, 22-189, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton support for the reduction of the speed limit on Rosedale Road, County Road 604 by Mercer County from 40 and 45 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour. Is there a motion on that? Leticia, thank you. Eve's got the second. Questions or comments on the motion? Eve.
I'm going to comment both on this and on the next resolution. This is the result of a lot of hard work on the part of the engineering department, a lot of outreach to the county. I know, of course, this is a resolution, it's a county road, so they're going to make the determination. Okay, I'm going to finish quickly. But the fatality and other issues that have resulted around the school, both the construction of the roundabout and the speed limit, are really going to go a long way towards addressing that. So thank you to all who worked on it. And
Thanks, Eve.
yes, but I'm going to be coughing.
Good luck. Okay, were there any other questions or comments? But yeah, Deanna, thank you very much for all engineering is done and working with the county engineering department. It just shows when we have these partnerships and we all work together that good things can happen. And the speed with which this is actually coming together for two governmental entities to be working together to come up with something that actually makes sense and will be helpful is in the time frame it's happened is pretty good. So thank you.
We're very fortunate that Mercer County really put safety as the utmost priority and made this, took the action to get us to this point.
Yeah. Big thanks to them also. Okay. Any other? All right. All in favor on the speed limit reduction, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. 22-190, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton support for Mercer County's proposed construction staging plan on Rosedale Road, County Route 604, to accommodate construction of a roundabout at the intersection of General Johnson Road and Greenway Meadows Park in summer 2022. Layton's got the motion. Michelle's got the second. Any further questions or comments? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. 22-191, resolution of the mayor and council of Princeton approving the 2020 through 2025 collective negotiations agreement with Princeton FMBA Local 72. That's the firefighters union. Michelle's got the motion. Sir, Eve's got the second. Questions or comments on the resolution?
I have comments. I don't know if Bernie wanted to say anything about the contract before.
Yeah, I can just talk real quick. So, thank you. So this is the first contract for our firefighters. They began as paid firefighters in 2020. The first quarter, they started with the contract negotiations. At that point, unfortunately, COVID hit and the contract negotiations really didn't go anywhere. So I was given kind of what my predecessor had done before that. And meeting with Michael Ye and Labor Council, we had numerous meetings with the firefighters union, the FMBA. It's a unique, there's 6 paid firefighters. They work in teams of 2. Their schedule is unique in that they work a 24-48, meaning they work 24 hours and then they're off the next 48 and then they work again. As a result, they work a fair amount more than your typical municipal employee. A lot of back and forth. We were able to supplement our firefighting force. So you have the volunteers, we have the paid firefighters, and now we're going to have the fire inspectors who are going to change their schedule a little bit so that it gives us more firefighting capacity on a daily basis. There's going to be 2 platoons in the FMBA because of that. There's the firefighting platoon, and then there is the inspection platoon. And that's really this contract, while it was initially contemplated, would take us out through the end of 2024. Because of when we finished it, everyone agreed it's going to take us out now till the end of 2025, and that'll save us money with Labor Council and negotiations. So it's the first contract. It's pretty exciting, and I'm glad we're able to finally put it behind us. And I thank you for your support in getting us there.
Thank you. So I just wanted to comment and thank Bernie for the hard work and with Michael getting to this point, getting this done. It's never easy, and this was a new precedent-setting contract. Having these career firefighters on board now is really essential to our safety in our town and our response times. And I think it was absolutely a brilliant move to integrate the fire inspection as firefighters and create one whole department that really is cost effective and makes a lot of sense to have that cross training and work together. So I'm just really pleased that this is moving forward tonight. I just want to thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments or questions?
Just want to also congratulate the negotiation team on both sides. It's a good contract, and it's going to keep us safe here in Princeton.
Thanks, Lee.
Well, what they said.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. Consent agenda is up next. Payment of bills. One contract, the tax overpayment, and firefighter membership. Everybody's good with the 4 items on the consent agenda? All right, someone want to move the consent agenda? Thanks, Leighton. Michelle's got the second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Who wants to, Eve?
I'm going to be David. I make a motion to dismiss.
There we go. Is there a second? Leighton?
I'll be Eve.
There you go. All right. Moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Good night, everybody.